My name is Matthew Calamane, and I am the writer and director of the featured film titled The Grinn. A story that is based on the true events that actually happened on the set where it was filmed, or otherwise known as my house from childhood. I found myself at home one weekend night. My parents were out of town, and I was returning from a cancelled sleepover at a friend's house. The lights were on when I got in the door, and I remembered getting a phone call from that same friend shortly thereafter, which would end up being the last normal event of the night. My brother was playing video games in the next room, and I could hear him tapping furiously at a video game while I spoke on the cordless phone. I walked around the living room and ended the phone call in the kitchen, when I remember hearing some kind of high-pitched squeal that came from the house somewhere, and I couldn't place where it was coming from, as it sounded the same in every room I went to investigate. It ended about a minute after it started, and was interrupted by the phone ringing, but the phone was not in the kitchen where I left it. It was in the bathroom on the counter in front of the sink. I answered the phone, and there was nobody there, so I hung up. It was at that point where I heard a dragging sound, like a large heavy object was being dragged in the attic crawl space above me. I followed the sound as it slowly navigated from room to room and ended up in my parents' bedroom, who still had a waterbed at that time. After the sound made it to the far wall, it stopped and the phone rang again. This time my friend was on the other end of it. I told him what was going on, and he told me to be careful and call the police. After I got off the phone, I lay down on the waterbed and was horrified to find a body-shaped solid object inside the waterbed mattress, and I leaped out. I then heard a knock at the door and answered it quickly, but there was nobody there. It was at this point where my brother called me from his room to check something out that he had just discovered in the game he was playing, and a little more than annoyed at his lack of interest in what was going on, I stormed into his room. There was nobody there. His bed was made, and the room was spotless. Neither the console nor the TV was on, and the controller was wrapped and unplugged. There was no way he could have hid and cleaned his room in the few seconds it took me to make it from the front door to his room. I had been alone the entire night, hearing for 20 straight minutes my brother playing a game that he was not present to be playing. The phone rang again, but again, it was not where I left it. This time it was resting on the kitchen counter, where I originally had left it. So I walked through the entire house to answer it. It was my friend calling again, this time saying that the call was dropped for some reason and he was calling me back. I explained what just happened, and there was another knock at the door. Since I was standing right next to it, I peeked out of the window within 2 seconds of the knocks, but there was nobody there. At this point, I opened the door and stepped onto the porch to make sure I didn't see anyone running away, as I had a large, wide open yard, and there wasn't anything to hide behind. I walked into the yard to look around, but didn't find anything. I found myself engaged in several more minutes of talking before my friend got off the line, and it was at that moment where I realized that the place I had been staring off into space while talking were two very large, black, reflective eyes looking back at me. The figure was tall and lanky, and stood only 10 feet or so from me, in the shadow cast by the front of the garage from the front door light. The most notable feature he wore was an inhumanely large smile, and he was grinning with oily, metallic teeth from literally ear to ear. Despite me staring directly at him for more than 5 minutes, I pretended I didn't notice him, and through willpower alone, made it inside the house without running as fast as I could, and instead I walked calmly. I remember feeling like if I ran, he would chase me, and somehow knew that he would have caught me easily. I barricaded myself in the room for the rest of the night and did not fall asleep until the sun came up the next morning and my parents were home. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before, and nothing like that has ever happened since. This is a recovered case file from the district attorney's office detailing the journal entries of one Brian Singer, a 14-year-old boy. The case was closed in 1993, but I was reminded of it when a similar incident occurred recently. I can't really prove they're connected, but I hope that I can make others aware of this, and maybe something could be done to save the next victim. August 3rd, 1992. This has been going on for over a week now, and no one believes me. I don't really do the whole journal thing, but this is freaking me out, and maybe if I write down everything I've seen and show it to the right people, they can help me. There's a man hanging around our house at night, and I don't know what he wants. I'm absolutely terrified that he's going to hurt me. The first time I saw him, I had just finished brushing my teeth and putting on my pajamas. I switched off the light in my room, and without the glare on the window, I could see outside to the streetlights across the road. There was a man under it, and he was looking right at me. I couldn't tell from the distance, but it looked like he had a big smile on his face, almost unnaturally big, and it made me really uncomfortable. At first, I didn't think anything. You know, it's just a guy on the street. Could have been some creep who watched me change, but I didn't want to tell my family and have them think I'm paranoid, so I just went to bed. The next night I turned out the light. He was there again, but this time when I saw him, he started walking towards my house. I didn't like him looking at me, so I stepped aside from the window. When I peeked back outside, he was just standing in the middle of the road with that smile on his face, staring at my house. I went to bed, but it took me a long time to fall asleep, and I kept looking at the window nervously. On the third night, the same thing happened, except this time I watched him walk all the way to the sidewalk in front of my house and just stand there staring at me. I finally decided it was time to tell someone, so I called for my dad. He came into the room, but by the time he got there, the smiling man was gone. Dad told me if I saw him again to let him know. On the fourth day, the smiling man was back again, waiting on the sidewalk out front. I called to my dad, and my dad went outside this time with a bat to look for him. He came back after an hour of looking around the house and neighborhood and told me he didn't see anyone. We live in a pretty quiet neighborhood, so it would be hard for someone to come and go unnoticed. He said he'd talk with the neighbors and see if they'd seen anything. The next night, my dad planned a stakeout with some of the neighbors, and they all watched out of their windows from 9 p.m. when I usually go to bed at 11. No one saw the smiling man, and I feel like my dad is beginning to suspect I'm making him up. August 7th, 1992. Dad and the neighbors continued the neighborhood watch for 3 days, and the smiling man didn't return. He said maybe all the attention it drew scared him off. I'm just happy the smiling man hasn't been around. Hopefully he is gone for good. I've been having trouble sleeping and keep having nightmares with the smiling man getting me or being in my house. It would have been a lot better if we had caught him. August 8th, 1992. The smiling man was back last night, standing under the streetlight across the street again. Dad already seems mad at me. Maybe I won't tell him unless he starts getting close to the house again. I just want this all to be over. August 9th, 1992. He's getting closer again. Last night he was walking on our side of the road. He was slowly walking closer, so I hid under the windowsill where he couldn't see me and slept there all night. August 10th, 1992. The smiling man was right outside my window last night. I yelled so loud when I woke up and saw him. My dad ran into the room, but he was already gone. Mom called the police and they searched the whole neighborhood, but didn't find anything. They've put out an alert for him, but I couldn't give a very good description. It's dark, and all I could see was that stupid smile of his. I hope the police find him and shoot him. August 11th, 1992. I'm asking my mom to get me shades for my window. Maybe if the smiling man can't see into my room, he'll finally leave me alone. I can't have him there another night. I don't want to sleep in my room anymore. August 12th, 1992. We put up the shades in the window today. Hopefully the smiling man will realize he can't see me anymore and we'll go find some other kid to terrorize. August 13th, 1992. I kept waking up and staring at the shades through the night. I had the creepiest feeling. The shades glow a little bit from the streetlight outside, so I was watching the glow when a shadow moved in front of the shades. It crossed back and forth a few times. I was really scared, but after a while it didn't come back. I must have watched it for 2 hours or so, before I finally got so tired I fell asleep. August 14th, 1992. I woke up late at night, and there was no glow on the shades. Something was right outside of my window, standing there. I quietly got up and went to tell my dad. My dad was grumpy but grabbed the bat and went outside. I watched from in my room. The shadow was still there for a while. Then as I heard Dad coming, it moved away. Then I saw Dad's shadow cross over it. He circled around the house and came back and didn't see anything. There weren't even footprints in the dirt outside of my window. He sat me down and had a long talk with him. It's pretty obvious he thinks I'm making this up. I really don't know what to do. August 17th, 1992. The shadow is back every night. I finally had the courage to peek through the gap around the shades. I saw him up close. I could see his eyes glittering in the faint light and that big smile of his right outside of my window. My heart was pounding so hard and my legs were shaking so bad, I almost fell over. I sat up in bed watching the shadow on the shades until I fell asleep. I'm scared he's going to break in, and no one will be able to get me in time. August 22nd, 1992. This isn't right. I know it can't be seeing what I'm seeing. I can't understand how it's real. The smiling man was in my room. I woke up and he was inside, at the far wall opposite my bed. I yelled so loud my dad came bursting into my room, but when he turned the light on, there was nothing there. My heart was pounding, and I didn't know what to say, so I lied. I told them I saw a shadow outside of my window again. My dad just lifted the shade and looked outside, then went back to bed angry. I could hear my parents arguing about something from their room, but I'm not sure what. I know my dad thinks I'm making these things up, and why would he believe me? How can a man come through a locked window into my room, then just disappear? August 23rd, 1992. He was back again, inside my room. I pretended to be asleep, and he just stood there watching me. I was so scared he'd know I was awake. My heart was beating so loud, and my breathing was so fast. I kept my eyes closed, listening, hoping that if he thinks I'm asleep, he won't hurt me. August 24th, 1992. I barely slept. He was there in my room again, and when he noticed I was awake, he started walking slowly towards me. Every time I closed my eyes, he would stop until I looked at him again. So I just lay there with my eyes squeezed shut until I was so tired I fell asleep. I can't sleep in my room anymore. I'm going to sleep on the couch in the living room. August 30th, 1992. After spending 5 nights on the couch, my parents aren't happy with me. They don't believe me, and they want me to go back to sleeping in my room. Ever since school started, I've hardly slept at all, and I've gotten in trouble at school for falling asleep in class. I don't know why they think I would lie about this, but there's no way I'm going back into my old room. September 6, 1992. My dad slept in my room for 5 days to prove to me that there's nothing to be afraid of. Now he's saying I'll be grounded if I don't sleep in my room. I'm so scared of having to go back in there. September 7th, 1992. My dad pushed me into my room and closed the door on me last night. I tried to sleep, but I was so scared. I woke up after midnight and the smiling man was back, and again he slowly crossed the room. Every time I looked, he got closer. Every time I closed my eyes and ignored him, he stopped, but just lingered there, watching. I pretended to be asleep again, but I could feel his eyes on me. I could hear his slow, quiet breathing faintly over my pounding heart. September 8th, 1992. I got into a huge yelling argument with my dad over having to sleep in my room. He's threatening to have me see a psychiatrist and put me on drugs for being a pathological liar. I don't want to be on drugs. This is really happening. I'm so tired. September 9th, 1992. Dad barricaded me in my room with a chain. I was trapped inside with the smiling man. I don't think I slept all night. I just faded in and out of consciousness, but I was always too scared. I would peep through my half-open eyes, and every time the smiling man would see and start coming closer to me, I could see the faint light from the shades glimmering off his teeth and eyes. I can't do this anymore. I'm stealing the kitchen knife and putting it in my bed. This is the last journal entry. When his parents removed the chair from the door the next day to check on Brian, they found him in bed, holding the kitchen knife with both wrists slashed and his sheets soaked in blood. The windows were both locked, and there was no sign of intrusion. No footprints, no fingerprints, nothing. Medical examiners confirmed the wounds looked self-inflicted. Psychiatric analysis of the case came to one of two conclusions. The smiling man was a hallucination that Brian could no longer live with, or he was a manifestation of Brian's depression. Each time he focused on the depression, it grew bigger, closer, harder to ignore, and each time he ignored it, it just stayed exactly how it was. Eventually, Brian couldn't handle his mental illness and took the only way out he knew how. We got a call recently about a smiling man standing outside the room of a young teen. I can't help but wonder if this is going to happen again.